Hey guys, Roxbox90 here with an updated deck tech, although it's really a deck tech because I changed the deck so significantly that it really is just, you might as well call it a new deck. So pretty much this is what I'd call Shaundra control. It's mono red, and kind of Koth is beginning to go out of style. Price is dropping significantly, even though Scars is out of print, and I think it's time to really highlight a deck with Shaundra, because she is, in my opinion, one of my favorite new Planeswalkers, and I think she's absolutely amazing. People just overlooked her because Koth is around. It's like, okay, well then there can't be another really good red Planeswalker to compete because, you know, he's Koth. But I think she's staggeringly good, and I really like her control aspect. So let's get into the deck. Okay, so first up you have a very simple land base, 20 mountains. That's really all there is to it. Since this deck has a tiniest splash of blue, you could run Sulphur Falls if you want. But I've never really needed it because you have another mana control color, so you really don't need it. It's not a big deal. So, I mean, it's pretty simple. You have 20 mountains. Then you have 4 Sphere of the Suns. Sphere of the Suns is pretty much your mana changer, and it's also pretty much the only significant ramp card that Red can have. It comes in play 3 counters on it, you can remove a counter to add a mana. So, since you want to cheat Shaundra out turn 3 as quickly as possible, Sphere of the Suns is really the only way to do it in red. It also is just a pure ramp card, so at turn 2, if you have nothing else really to do, instead of just wasting a burn spell on your opponent, you might as well just hang on to that, play Sphere of the Suns, because it'll give you a step up later on. Next up you have 4 Tumble Magnet. Tumble Magnet can be incredibly irritating, and it's really a necessity in this deck. Since you want to keep Shaundra alive, and you don't have a whole lot of creatures that are just that can block for you, then this card is kind of the one you want to tap your opponent's artifacts when they're doing stuff, to tap their creatures before they're attacking you. It also, since it's colorless, some cards like Phyrexian Crusader that have protection from red, you can't really touch them with anything else, but having a card like this around makes it very possible. So it's really just there to stop marauding creatures, Titans most of all. That's kind of the one I've had the most problems with. If the game even lasts that long, then Tumble Magnet is there to save you, and it's a really nice card. It also helps in Metalcraft, which we'll get to later. The last artifact in the deck, you have Contagion Clasp. Contagion Clasp puts a //- counter on a creature, so it's really good for dealing with Weenie, because they play a creature turn 1, or 2 creatures turn 1. Having Contagion Clasp come in turn 2 to knock off one of them is really nice. Also, the Proliferate later on is incredibly important for your Tumble Magnets, Sphere of the Suns, and of course, Shaundra. So, the Proliferate is very, very nice. Next up, you have creatures. You have 4 Goblin Arsonists. It's a 1-drop, which is the only 1-drop in the deck, besides for Galvanic Blast, which we'll get to, and you usually don't want to waste Galvanic Blast turn 1 if you can help it. So Goblin Arsonist is really nice. It also is a nice blocker for Shaundra, so it can protect her from early attacks. The additional damage helps it with Weenie, because people are afraid to attack with 2/1/1s, since it blocks one, kills the other one. Or it can just kill Weenies en masse. So if they attack, even with a big creature that you're chumping, you still get to kill one small one in addition. So its cost is very effective for what it does. And of course, if you do something like Slagstorm later on, then it'll die, but it'll also deal 1 more damage, which of course can help more damage on your opponent. Kadoltha Phoenix, since you often have Metalcraft by the time you hit 5, Kadoltha is a really nice backup in case Shaundra is failing you for whatever reason. It's a 4/4 flying haste, and when your Metalcraft's around, you can replay it for 4 from your graveyard, so it's not even really a 5 cost. If your opponent manages to kill it, unless they exile it, it comes back even cheaper. So Kadoltha Phoenix is an absolutely excellent choice. Next up we have the burn spells. So first up, for 1, we have Galvanic Blast. It's shock, and when you have Metalcraft, it's 4 damage for 1, which is amazing. It's an instant speed, so you definitely want to run 4 of them. And of course, if they do something turn 1 that you're particularly worried about, some quick drop, then the Galvanic Blast gives you that option. It also is so cheap that later on, you can do a couple of burn spells at once, and for its cheap cost, it's very easy to use. Next up we have, in burn, we have Incinerate, which is a 2 for 3 damage and when it does damage to a creature, and the creature dies, it can't be regenerated. So that's just a nice thing to have in addition to its cost. But 2 for 3 is definitely a fine cost. Of course, Lightning Bolt would be preferred, but since this deck is standard as of the time of this recording, then Incinerate is a really nice choice for simple burn. More complicated burn, you have Volt Charge. Volt Charge is 3 for 3 damage and proliferates. So in this deck, you have a lot of proliferate because you have all the artifacts that need proliferation, and also Shaundra needs proliferation. Volt Charge is 3 for 3 proliferate, which makes it a really excellent burn spell. Then we run 4 Slagstorm. Slagstorm is one of the less budgetary cards in this deck. Mostly this deck is budget. It's a fairly easy deck to build. Doesn't cost a whole lot of money. Definitely under $100. But Slagstorm is a really nice addition, particularly against weenie decks. Because it's 3 damage to all creatures. So your creatures, if you have Cadeltha Phoenix out, it won't die. And if you have Goblin Arsonist out, it'll die but do additional damage. Of course, it wreaks havoc on white weenie, or any weenie decks. Green-white tokens now is one of the bigger ones you could deal with. Black-white tokens will be around when Dark Ascension comes out. So Slagstorm is really nice. The additional ability to do 3 damage to each player is also excellent, since you won't have you hopefully won't be taking a lot of damage since you'll be controlling the field. The other thing about Slagstorm is that now there are a lot of decks that run Hexproof. You have Invisible Stalkers, which are just evil, and you have Geists of St. Traft, and I'm sure there'll be more Hexproof guys in the future. So Slagstorm, as of now, is really the only way to deal with them. So if they throw a sword on Invisible Stalker, you can often still kill them with Slagstorm. If they throw a sword on a Geist, you may have to combo the Slagstorm and a Shaundra. Otherwise, you're pretty much screwed. So, and the last spell in the deck besides for Shaundra is Tezzeret Gambit. I only run 2 of them. I tried running 3 or 4 at one point, and it just didn't seem necessary. Tezzeret Gambit's kind of, at the end of the day, if you need it, you end up getting it. It draws you 2 for 3 and a Phyrexian mana. If you have Sphere of the Suns, then it might cost you no life, but that's of course only if you have those out. If you don't, it's only 2 life and 3 for 2 cards and proliferation. So the proliferation, of course, is nice, and the drawing 2 cards is even better. And of course, we have Shaundra. So Shaundra is 4 for 3. Her +1 does 1 damage to our creature or player, so you can ping off weenie things. You can do 1 damage just to your opponent. The real idea is just to try to get her up in terms of her count of loyalty counters. But it's a decent burn because it's creature and player, or player. Whereas the other Shaundra, I think it was Shaundra Nalaar, is only to a player. So the ability to kill a creature is very handy. Her -2 is kind of the center point of the deck, which is that whenever you -2 her, you then copy an instant or sorcery spell that you're going to play. So, yeah, Volt Charge, Tezzeret Gambit. It's amazing because you play the Volt Charge, for example, you do 3 damage, and you proliferate. Her -2 means you do it twice, so you do 3 damage twice, 3 and 3, and you proliferate twice. So you replenish her counters onto her, as if she didn't lose any, and you do double the spell. So you proliferate everything else twice, so your Tumble Magnets, your Sphere of the Suns go up, she goes up, 2, so back to where she was, and you do more damage. So it doesn't really cost you anything except for she's not going up higher, she's just staying where she is. But, I mean, come on, to double a spell for that, with nothing happening, it's great. Only downside, of course, is that you really don't want to use it unless she has 3 loyalty counters on her, or more. Because if you use it when she's 2, she'll kill herself, which is kind of pointless. So it's preferable just to have 3 or more on her, which is why you have the Tumble Magnets and the Goblin Arsonist and all the other blockers and burn to help protect her. And then -6, she does 6 damage to up to 6 target creatures and or players. So this is kind of the end game. It wipes your opponent's field out, or you can just kill your opponent, because it says up to, it doesn't say 6 different, it says 6 target. So you can do all of it to 1 player, you could do it to 2 different players. If you're playing multiplayer, you can do it to a bunch of creatures and the player. If you, for whatever reason, don't want to try to kill them, or they have more life than 36, which is doubtful, but you never know. That's kind of the end of the game, if she gets up to that. And with all the proliferate going on, it's very likely to get her up there. I mean, I've gotten her up there quite consistently. And the last thing about the -2 that I forgot to mention, if you do it on things like, say, Slagstorm, then you do double, even though you don't get the -2 back, but have the ability to do 6 damage to all creatures, can level the field even of Titans and things like that. So even if the tokens and they're somehow they get +1s from tribal or whatever, and they're up to 4 or 5, 6 damage usually takes them all down anyway. If they're already past 6, then you're in big trouble. So that is the whole Shaundra deck. It's not incredibly complicated, but it's a very fun deck. I find it plays very, very well. It's beaten, I know it's beaten Wolf Run, it's beaten Mono Black Infect. I played against not Green White, I played against White Weenie, but I've not played against Green White Tokens. I played against Tempered Steel. So it does well against rush decks. It really does. I guess its biggest weakness are decks that run Hexproof, because you don't really have an answer to Hexproof besides for Slagstorm, and you're limited by Slagstorm. It's also, if you certain control decks, other control decks might have enough to deal with it, because if you can counter some of the bigger spells in the deck, there aren't really an infinite ways to do damage. So an opposite control deck might be able to take advantage. It hasn't happened yet, but it could. And yeah, so pretty much the scariest deck you'll probably face is Geistblade. That's pretty much the most obvious terror for this deck. But, I mean, mono red is always fun. So, and of course Shaundra is, in my opinion, incredible. So the deck works really well, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you think of my deck. Thanks.